Me the chance of the make you see. You think it a go so when I hold you tonight, I go and do all of the things where you like, so you can see they don't believe me. Give me the chance make I do it. Why when man and no man go pan the house, them always have something to prove. Man a go and rough like the him can't lose. Woman a say she a go blow man fuse. Just wait hear something me discover. On the phone me a chat to me lover. To a we argument saucy like pepper. I tell me one another we two and now we bother. She said, get your little boy, your little bugger. I just never see this way give power. With banana I am planting and flower. So when I hold you later I go and devour. Me just hang up a roast this power. Me say to get a thing well cover. Think up the car in the next half hour. When I met her I'm so cellular. Hello.
Kiana want you.
You think it a go so when I hold you tonight, I go and do all of the things where you like, so you can see they don't believe me. Give me the chance I go and read them you see. You think it a go so when I hold you tonight, I go and do all of the things where you like, so you can see they don't believe me. Give me the chance I go and read. Why when
there's such a feeling running through my body, running through my mind, and new things to me. Girl, it makes me wanna love ya. It makes me wanna touch ya. It makes me wanna make sweet love to you all night long. Do you wanna, do you wanna, do you wanna, do you wanna, do you wanna come flex with me? Come on, do you wanna, 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 do you wanna come flex with me?
Give me the wine where you mash up in America. Give me the wine where you mash up in Canada. Give me the wine where you mash up the 14 parishes in Jamaica. Give me the wine where the ouch them a ball for. Give me the wine where the mugglers a scream for. Give me the wine where rookie little bubbler. When the chichi wine and she a scream for cocoa wine. Give me the 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 X amount of cocoa wine, nothing less. Wind up your waistline, wind up your chest. Wind up your body now your little short dress. The cocoa wine, make it a the latest. Don't you see the girl them a wind up them rumper. Waistline and move for the bumper jumper. Sweat start to take me and pay a cold bump. And the wickedest wine when it's every month. So give me the wine where you mash up in America. Give me the wine where you mash up in Canada. Give me the wine where you mash up the 14 parishes in Jamaica. Give me the wine where the yours crew a ball pop. Give me the wine where the love crew a scream pop. Give me the wine where the little bubbler. When them chichi wine and she a scream pop. Cocoa wine. Give me the cocoa wine. Give me the cocoa wine. Give me the.
Them searching. That is why they part our things. And them searching. Like boy just wanna make them win. Them searching. That is why they duplicate the swings. And them searching. Whoa, whoa. New tune when you use and wake them. My biggest phrases we take and treat them. Some get to break but the far it take them. Even takes over now the line like Big Ben. Good and never get me down. Vocabulary worth a couple million pounds. When everybody get around, coming to you with the alien sound. Hear them searching. That is why they part our things. And them searching. Like for just wanna give them a wing. Hear them searching. That is why they part our things. And them searching.
Well, we're having a bashment party. People get to feel the hype. Wearing Gucci and the money. Feeling rich like Wesley Snipes. Drinking crystal with my shorty. Burning my chalice to the night. So we're having a bashment party, so let's rock till morning light. Boy.
Husband, girl, what if you tell me if you're ready? Well, if you know you're ready, cock it up and spread it, girl. You know the ear, meditate, see if the me makes you down like Sly and Radicals. Me feeling hot, ready to go party. What's the better fox make me happy? Hennessy and Bacardi, people attack me, but still nobody can
See them
party.
now we having a bashment party. People, can't you feel the hype? Wearing Gucci and the money, feeling rich like Wesley Snipes. Drinking crystal with my shorty, burning my chalice through the night. So we having a bashment party, so let's rock the morning light. Yeah.
Waterman, me do the water walk. Come from waterworks, me drive the water truck. Come again. Waterman, me do the water walk. Come from waterworks, me drive the water truck. Nicky come check me know what you are. Fed up on the man, the way I eat the sitting raw. For about one go under, that I know we law. Traction we use, bruise up the two jaw. So she tell Patsy, y'all say me cold. Good exercise when I sit down in a hole. Touch her the right place, she lose control. Spider road right and deal with her soul. But just circle Carol, I'm a fix alright. I'm the pampas, I killing a whole time. I'm in 7 days a week, she can't climb. I'll him sick just to enjoy the ride. See a Christian, that makes you backslide. Deacon one, take up on a jar ride. They say the bandit leg, you have the cock up backside. Make when man see them a ooh, but me the waterman, me do the water walk. Come in, water works, me drive the water truck. Come again, waterman, me do the water walk. Come again, water works, me drive the water truck. Come sideways, set up yourself straight. Water shampoos, no not a bed. Wet up your front room and your yard gate. Not to turn it off at 8 for the woman them. Put your band and can relate. Give them it and give them it straight. You want a real man, no not a fake. All of the woman them. Say what? Come on, me do the water.
I'm on the go.
So we'll start in 1 minute, everyone. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Caribbean Solidarity Network for the first of 3 sessions dealing with the issue of race and COVID. My name is Melissa Sobers, and I will be hosting tonight's event entitled Race and COVID, Our Communities on the Frontlines. So before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that we are here today on stolen land. And if you have been to other events in the city, you are likely familiar with the names of the Indigenous and First Nations listed in land acknowledgements: the Huron-Wendat, the Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississauga of the New Credit River. You will have heard of this territory as being covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwe and allied nations. But these acknowledgements speak of the past as if it were all settled, as if the present is not replete with violence and erasure, and as if the future were not in jeopardy because of our collective inability to face our histories. As we acknowledge the Indigenous and First Nations of this land we're gathered on. And as we recognize that this land has been the site of human activity for over 15,000 years, we as CSN would like to take this moment to ask, what are we doing to build Indigenous futures here? This is significant for us as Caribbean people organizing here in Toronto. And firstly, as people who have been displaced from our homelands due to histories of enslavement and indentureship, there is a connected and complicated relationship of dispossession and displacement through colonial structures and imperialist ideologies. After all, in many places in the Americas, stolen lands have also needed stolen bodies for labor. And the theft and genocidal violence go hand in hand. Second, we're also asking what our responsibilities are to the Indigenous peoples here, as well as those in the Caribbean. Our futures are connected. What are we doing here to build and repair futures together? These are the questions that we don't have the answers to, but us as an organization want to put in the work in the context of solidarity to get there. So to begin tonight's conversation, it would be an understatement for me to say that 2020 has been a rough year. And although COVID-19 virus does not discriminate, this pandemic has had a disproportionate effect on many marginalized communities, deepening and magnifying the effects of oppression in this settler colonial states like Canada. In the summer, we learned that 83% of people with the reported COVID-19 infection identified with a racialized group. And Black and Caribbean people were impacted at a disproportionate rate compared to all other groups in the city. Despite that, we have not seen increased resources for our community. The situation is not unique, however, and for migrant workers in the fields of Southern Ontario to the Haitian asylum seekers working in long-term care homes in Quebec, Caribbean people have been put in some of the most dangerous and deadly situations in order to keep others fed and safe. So tonight, we're pleased to be joined by Gabriel Allahdua, a former migrant farm worker and now organizer with the collective Justice for Migrant Workers. And we're also joined by Carolina Jimenez, a community organizer with a passion for racial justice and health equity. Carolina is a registered nurse, public health professional, and a coordinator of the Decent Work and Health Network, which is a not-for-profit organization of public health professionals advocating for evidence-based public policy to protect workers facing precarious conditions. She's also a Colombian migrant and settler on the Dish with One Spoon territory. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Gabriel and Carolina. So I would like to start us off by just sort of framing the conversation because it's impossible for us to discuss COVID-19 without thinking about the racialized impact that it has had and the class impact. So we could start, I guess, with Gabriel, if you'd like to talk a little bit about the impacts of race and class playing out across the lives of migrant farm workers during the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone in Zoom land tonight. As you heard a while ago, that I'm a former migrant farm worker. On the 16th of October was World Food Day. That's every year on the 16th of October, the world focus on, how secure our food supply is. And this year, of all years, we were encouraged, and up to now, we are still being encouraged to stay home. We are forced to think more about our food supply. How reliable, if we are allowed, encouraged to stay home, how reliable is my food supply gonna be? So the real questions are being asked. So more people have been questioning their food supply and basically questioning the whole relationship, how reliable our food supply is. I want to tell you that being a migrant farm worker means we see danger. In my home country, red means danger. In my home country, they taught us in school, and I'm pretty sure that's the same science that's been taught in Canada, that the leaf, the green leaf we see outside, that is the natural factory where our food is being synthesized. So a green leaf, every time I see a leaf, to me it should be green. That's where food is being synthesized. But every time I see a red leaf, I think of danger. I think of the 20 injustices that migrant farm workers face in Canada. And that's what I want to highlight today. And that's what COVID is highlighting. I want to tell you that all the people that are involved from the seed, from the growing of the seed, all the way to take the food all the way to your table. And who are those people? All those people who engage in all those activities, the planting of the seed, the picking of the fruits, the packaging, the processing, even the distribution of your food, even when you go to the restaurants, the people who prepare your food. When I look at these people when engage in all those activities that eventually take the seed to your table, when I look at these people, they are all people of color. Majority are people of color like me. Majority, if not all of them, they earn minimum wage. We all have precarious status. We all work long hours. We are non-unionized. We are not unionized. Can you imagine the working conditions associated with non-unionized work? And the list goes on and on and on. And to make it worse, look at the bottom. We don't know, we know so little about human rights issues and employment standards issues. Can you imagine the working conditions associated with your food? Every time I think about these people, they usually say we are at the bottom of the ladder. But every time I hear the word ladder, that there's some consolation in that. If it's a ladder, then I expect with time we'll climb the ladder. But what happened? With time, what happened? Being a migrant farm worker in Canada, whether you spend 20 years or so, you're still at the bottom of the ladder. So it's not a ladder to me. A ladder means hope. But to me, we are at the bottom of the pyramid because we cannot move. So we form the base of that pyramid. And that is the challenge that we have. Now, I want to draw your attention to three ways, the system, at least three instruments in Canada, that creates our vulnerabilities. The first one is, and that is the definition of a migrant farm worker, migrant worker in Canada, and that is enshrined in Canadian law. Look at it. Who is a migrant farm worker? Who is a migrant worker in Canada? There are people who are denied the right to vote. Imagine 60,000 people, 40,000 to 60,000 people are denied the right to vote. So we do not have a say. Can you imagine that our mouth is shut because we cannot vote? So we do not have a voice. We are denied the right to participate in culture and community. What does that make us? We are denied the right to participate in culture and community. What is that? It doesn't that make us less human? Look at that. We are denied the right to participate in family life. What does that make us? Being a migrant worker, it means that we are denied the right to be protected by ordinary labor standards. Can you imagine that? We are denied the right to access adequate and comprehensive healthcare, and so on and so on. We can't unionize. Can you imagine? So you can see Canadian law is designed to keep us in a vulnerable and precarious position. It creates our vulnerabilities. Let me draw your attention to another instrument in Canada. And look at how it's presented to you now. Another instrument that creates our vulnerabilities. Look at that. Buy local. And it is presented into you in such a nice way. Look at how it is packaged. Nice glittery bag, right? Buy local. Let me open that bag tonight and let me show you how this creates our vulnerabilities. Canada is saying to the sending countries, send me people who are Black, people who are brown, people of color. That's what Canada is saying. One, send me people of color. Number two, send me if those people, English is a second language, or if they're illiterate. Send me those people. People of color, but people who are either illiterate or English is a second language. And the third thing Canada wants, send me those people who are ignorant about labor and human rights issues. That is what the people Canada is asking of the sending countries. But look at that. What's happening in Canada? We are welcome in Canada in a climate of fear. And climate of fear, that's a big topic, but I'll just tell you one example how fear is built in that program. And what is life? living a life of fear and living a life of hope. The whole program is built on fear. Let me give you one example. Our employers control the travel agency that books our flight in and out of Canada. The moment we speak up, it's so easy for employers to book our flight out. So that keeps us in fear. That is one of so many instruments that creates fear in the program. Another thing is to keep us compliant. What happened? They pay us minimum wage, and they keep us in isolated housing. We live on the farmer's property. We are isolated. So that creates fear, and that keeps us compliant. We are forced to be compliant. And all of that is happening where? In Canada. And what is Canada known as? A country with a culture of silence. Nobody speaks up. And is that an illegal program? All of that has the full blessing of government. So you can see that the program is designed to create our vulnerabilities. Let me draw your attention to the third instrument. The program that brought me to Canada as a migrant farm worker is like a telephone number. It's like a telephone number. The program that brought me to Canada is also like a tree. Let me go to the telephone number. That program was created in 1966. This year it's 54 years. That program, look at how that program, the 3 pillars of that program, look at how it creates our vulnerabilities. We are here to do jobs Canadians do not want to do. By the way, this year, unemployment is at its highest in Canada because of COVID. So many people lose their jobs, right? Unemployment is high. That is the best time for Canadians to show that they're willing to do the work. But yet still, there's so many vacancies. There's so many labor shortages on the farms. Why is that? Because Canadians do not want to do those jobs. So what is the reason? What is the reason? The second pillar of that job, of the program, is we cannot apply for status. What is status in Canada? What is status in Canada? Over 100 years, from the Chinese railroad workers, Canada continued to use unjust immigration laws and unjust labor laws to keep migrant workers vulnerable and precarious. So these two things are working in tandem: unjust labor laws, unjust immigration laws, and unjust labor law working in tandem. So we cannot apply for status. And what does that mean? If we have status, status is like Advil, status is like Tylenol. If we have status, it will take care of 2 things for us. It will take care of our labor vulnerabilities, and it will take care of our immigration vulnerabilities. By having status, it takes care of 2 things for us. The 2 main headaches we have, our labor issues. By having status, we can have an open work permit. By having status, it takes care of our immigration vulnerabilities. And look at the third pillar of that program, the leaves. We are tied to our employer. So we are here to do the dirty work. We do not have status. We cannot apply for status, and we are tied to our employer. Now, if you don't have that status, you know what does that mean? You are denied basic human rights. We are denied basic labor standards. To be tied to our employer, to do the dirty work, and at the same time denied basic human rights and basic labor standards. That's the program. That is how the program creates our vulnerability. As a result of that, we face 20 injustices. Now, let me talk a little about COVID and its impact. There's so many things I can say, but I'll just take one example. At this very moment, it is estimated that there are 600 Trinidadians that are stranded in Canada. These workers, their contracts have ended in September. When I go to see those workers, look at that. These workers, a lot of those I've seen, they work on tobacco farms. Because of frost, the crop was destroyed in September. They did not work entire month of September. The crop was destroyed, so they did not have a full cycle of work in September. So they did not get a full income in September because of frost. September, look, we are in December. They are unemployed. At this point in time, from September to now, unemployed. Number 2, they've never ever spent winter in Canada. Number 3, they do not have appropriate clothing. Number 4, a lot of the houses I see, it is not designed to face winter. And number 5, up to now, the government have not intervened to help them to get EI. At this point in time, we're trying to feed them. And tonight, I'm asking you, I'm encouraging you, I'm begging you, I'm trying to persuade you, I'm trying to push you into action. How can you be of help to these people? In a nutshell, In a nutshell, what I've told you there, migrant workers are being milked by every stakeholder in the system. And would we allow that to go unchallenged? Is that a natural law or is that man-made and that can be changed? So my question to you is that there's power in your hands. And tonight I would encourage you to discover the power. Whether you're a consumer, whether you're a voter, whether you're a student, there's power in your hands. How can you use that power to create a better world? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Really appreciate that presentation there. Visually stimulating, and you are definitely a great educator on this issue. So I'm gonna pass it on to Carolina and see if you'd like to share on that question that I raised earlier, what your experience is hearing from, the impacts of recent class on the folks that you encounter with COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, folks, for having me on the call tonight. I'm going to share some slides with you in a moment, but before I get into the bulk of the conversation, I want to share with you my personal story as to how I got into community organizing. And as was shared earlier, I am from Medellin, Colombia. I am a migrant. I came here to seek political asylum from my home country, and that has always made me very aware of the systems and the factors that marginalize people like me, that marginalize Black and Indigenous communities. And it always really drew me to health and taking care of people. So I pursued nursing, and I practiced in the emergency room in Kingston, Ontario. And that, after a while, that became really deeply unsatisfying because I was helping mend people, and although that's good, it didn't allow me to address any of the root causes that led people to have such critical conditions. And so I went back to school, and there I learned something that really changed my outlook, and it was that income is one of the most important social determinants of health, and that poverty is the biggest predictor of having bad health. And for many of us, how we make money is through work. And it's no coincidence that making low wages, the folks who are making low wages in these precarious conditions like Gabriel described are racialized. This is a systems level problem that requires effective public health. But the problem is that the public health and our healthcare system continue to perpetuate these problems. And I got involved. I really wanted to speak up on this, and I got involved with a group called the Decent Work and Health Network, which is the group that I help to coordinate now. And so I'm just to share some slides now for the rest of the presentation. And the Decent Work and Health Network is a group that advocates for changes in the actual employment laws as a means to address individual and community health. We're a group of health workers and care workers and also community advocates who see in our day-to-day practice that people who are earning low wages don't have basic protections like paid sick days, decent hours, and fair wages. And these are the people who are more likely to get sick from infectious diseases like the flu or COVID-19, but are also more likely to develop serious illness or get injured on the job. And as we've discussed earlier, it's very clear that who the workers are that are more likely to get sick. They're disproportionately racialized workers, low-income workers, and workers with disabilities. And what's clear to me personally as a health worker is that our voices are essential to shaping the policy that affects the health and well-being of our communities. In 2018, our advocacy was able to win us a number of protections for workers. We were able to win paid sick days. There was a promise of a $15 minimum wage. There was an end of sick notes. And for a year, workers had access to 2 paid sick days. Employers couldn't request a sick note for minor illnesses, and the minimum wage was on the rise. But when the Ford government came into power, they halted this progress and they took away the paid sick days. They brought back sick notes and they halted some of the other protections that we worked so hard to win. So in response to this, the Decent Work and Health Network, we decided to do a series of things. We had been fighting very hard for policy change, and we've been doing that through like research reports, press conferences, open letters, petition campaigns. And right now, what's happening in the mainstream media is that we're seeing a lot of discussion around the importance of having paid sick days, how that relates to COVID-19, and who is actually affected when we look at these policies. And so the Decent Work and Health Network, the way we think about this is how do we close the gap in access? And I want to bring up that paid sick days aren't just a matter of health equity, it's also a matter of racial justice. If we think about the places that have had the biggest breaks, I mean, it's really, there is a lot of connections here, right? Think about the biggest single outbreak that was in a Cargill meat processing plant where mainly Filipino workers earned low wages and had no access to paid sick days. We think about the outbreaks in the long-term care homes, and a lot of this precarious work we see is echoed in lots of other sectors. And now, part of our report, what we did is that we spoke to different workers who wanted to share their stories on precarious work and the impact that this had. And so I want to share a couple of those stories with you folks today. The first one is from Rumi. These are all sort of pseudonyms or nicknames for people. And she speaks of a circumstance with her son. And I'll read it out to you folks. And she said, "My son was really sick, so I took him to the hospital. The next day, I couldn't stay home with him, so I had to take my son to my work. I had no other choice. One of my coworkers even said to me, 'It's not good for him to stay here. He's sick. He needs to rest.' And she actually ended up covering for me and did a long shift so that I could go home." And we hear this time and time again, the impact that these inadequate working conditions have on family life, on community. And alongside the ton of medical research that's on the topic, this story is very indicative of what makes up our demands. First of all, that story was from before COVID-19, and we've definitely needed paid sick days before COVID-19, and we're going to need them long after. And it's this idea that we need protections permanently. We need them during COVID and after. COVID-19 just exacerbated a lot of the problems that we already had. And the other piece is that these policies, they need to be flexible. So workers need to have flexible access to things like paid sick days to reflect the reality, to reflect caregiving needs and responsibilities. The next quote is from Wyatt, a municipal waste collector. And he said, "I don't have access to paid sick days, and my coworkers don't have access to paid sick days, and we're collecting the city's entire municipal waste. COVID-19 is going to hit us hard." And this same person shared with us that he had actually had viral pneumonia, which is similar to the flu and similar to a lot of the symptoms that you get with COVID-19 in January of last year. And he went to work sick, and he got his entire workplace sick, of mostly racialized workers, and they got their family sick. And that in total was around 250 people that were sick with this type of flu. And what this story tells us is that, you know, we need to have seamless access to these policies, and that there can't be any sort of interruption in someone's income, for example, to apply through another program, to have to bring in a sick note and things like that. And that builds part of the reason why we've been advocating for at least 7 permanent paid sick days with additional 14 days during public health emergencies. This last story is from a migrant farm worker. His name is Jose, and he said, "There's no such thing as time off in any capacity. This led to my back and hand injuries. We went to our boss and we told him our hands were going numb and our backs were aching. And he said this was a normal part of our work and just to take an Advil. When some of us tried to assert our rights, we got ridiculed and bullied by our employer." And this leads us to the last principle of what it will take to deliver on effective paid sick days policies, which is for all. And this is, tying back to what Gabriel said, there can be no exceptions to policies like this. It should be available to everyone, regardless of status or workplace size. And policy should be informed by what we as a society believe everyone deserves. And good health and dignity at work should be given. And the working conditions migrant care workers face is a resounding example of what we say when we say that precarious work is a health hazard. And what we see in the case of migrant work across Canada is that the system is fundamentally flawed and treats workers as disposable. And even when workers are entitled to certain rights, they can't assert them because they could face termination or deportation. And I think this is exactly what Gabriel is saying. And this is why a key demand coming from migrant organizers is status for all, and which is why when we think about health policy, we must include that into that policy so everyone can have access to that. And so similarly to us, we have a couple other organizations that we work with. So migrant workers, specifically a group called the Care Workers Action Center, they have released some reports that draw on worker narratives and research to strengthen the movement and the demands. And so this past October, migrant care workers across Canada released a shocking report. It's called Behind Closed Doors, Exposing Migrant Care Worker Exploitation During COVID-19. Which tells the story of what it's like and what it's been like. Stories of abuse, about working every day without a break, thousands of dollars in stolen wages. And they made 14 critical recommendations from healthcare to status for all to worker protections, including permanent and adequate paid sick days. So we're starting to see the connections between our movements, between what it takes to deliver on an effective paid sick day policy for our public health, to migrant care workers organizing together. And we also make the links with other migrant organizing groups like the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. And in June, they released a report titled Unheeded Warnings, COVID-19 and Migrant Workers in Canada. And there are several key findings. The first one is that for fear of health and lost income, hundreds reported a lack of access to healthcare and health information. And without any paid sick leave, the top concern was associated with a loss of income. We can really think about the pressure to continue working if you can't make ends meet. The second finding is around a lack of status, making it really impossible for them to assert their rights, as well as workers not being able to socially distance, not receiving decent food, income, or health information during quarantine. And other findings include wage theft from employers, increased surveillance, threats, and racism. And these reports cover shocking details that unfortunately aren't very shocking to us anymore, because this type of racism and xenophobia is embedded in the system. And there's really, really great work being done by the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change and the Caregivers Action Center, and they really support the self-determination of migrants. And I think what's really special about this moment is, despite the hardships, we're building power to support each other and to win justice for all. And specifically the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, they do a lot of work sort of in three different categories. So for migrant students, care workers, and farm workers. And I think, like I shared earlier, our voices matter, and together, through these 3 different avenues when it comes to having decent work, when it comes to migrant care work and migrant farm workers. We've been able to share our stories, create powerful demands together, and bring them to the forefront in a way that we've never been able to do before. And this is because of our hard work and solidarity with folks like yourselves. So I have a couple of links to share in the chat, just if folks want to take some action and sign some petitions, get connected to any of these movements, and they'll stop there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Carolina. So we will be sure to pass on that information that you've posted in the chat on our Facebook chat as well. So I really appreciate hearing both perspectives here. I mean, it was amazing to hear. I feel like the perspectives are obviously complementary, because Gabriel, as someone who's, you know, lived through the experiences of injustices that you outlined, that migrant farm workers face every day. And Carolina, from the healthcare perspective, just seeing the effects of firsthand what happens to precarious workers, and both of you sort of finding a way into community organizing to change public policy. It's really incredible to see how you guys are working to make sure the most vulnerable workers in our society, the people who make sure that the functions of life that we take for granted, a lot of us take for granted, are still running. And I sort of conceptualize workers facing a sort of balance of fear, right? A fear of becoming infected, obviously, and passing that infection onto their families. And the balance of fear where they are fearful of the socioeconomic impact that it would have if one were to refuse work, and leading to, you know, permanent job loss, and Gabriel, as you outlined, deportation, and to even more precarious situations. So at this time, I'm going to ask folks that are joining us on the Facebook page as well as on Zoom, if you'd like to post any questions in our chat, or send us any questions if you have our WhatsApp number. So while folks are taking some time to send us questions, I'm going to pose one myself to both of you. So, you know, many of us won't be able to share time and space with our chosen and blood families as a result of the pandemic. So can you both speak to the sort of emotional toll being experienced both by migrant workers and other precarious workers around this time of year? And I'll open it up to anyone who wants to begin.
Yes, I can start the conversation here. As I was focusing on the Trinidadians who are caught stranded here. Normally, okay, first of all, the program that brought them to Canada is called the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. Under that program, we spend as little, someone can spend as little as 6 weeks to as much as 8 months in Canada. By the 15th of December, everybody on that program have to be back home. Today is what? Today is the 7th. And up to now, and those have met, their contract ended in September, October, November. So over 2 months, and they still do not know when they'll be going back home. Can you imagine? As I said, they've never spent winter here. They're not dressed properly for winter. Some of the bunkhouses are not equipped. Can you imagine the you know, the state of mind, the condition, imagine it's not just the state of mind, but also the financial situation. So it's the whole world is messed up. And you know what's really messed up too? Uncertainty. And that's what COVID has brought, right? A lot of uncertainty. What's the next step? You never know, right? So all of that is the world of a migrant, those 600 migrant workers who are caught stranded. The other workers, some of them have returned home because their contracts has ended. There's still other workers in Canada. Those who've returned home this year, they faced so many barriers, there's so many delays before they could come up, right? New protocols and so many things, right? given the situation as it is, basically it is getting out of hand, more infection. What is going to happen? There's a lot of uncertainty. And not only are they going to risk their health, but also their life, right? Because what are they going back to is really difficult. So it is not a very easy situation. And as Carolina said, our income forced, because we are low income minimum wage earners, we are forced to take those actions, right? We are forced to become migrants. We are literally forced. And look at that. What's the opposite of a migrant? If we come here freely, we are tourists. Migrants are forced to come to Canada, and that is the situation. And we're not only forced to risk our health, but also our lives, because at least 3 migrant farm workers have died in Ontario for the year, and that is the reality. We have frontline officers, but yet still the government deems us, they deem us essential or frontline workers, but yet still we are denied hazard pay. Carolina said minimum wage had to be $15, but the government kept it at 14. So, you know, the whole system is forcing us to be in a corner. Are we gonna watch and be spectators, or are we gonna discover the power in our hands and change the situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Carolina, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I do. I do. I've heard from a lot of workers. In particular, I'm speaking to personal support workers in long-term care homes, and just a lot of exhaustion, a lot of emotional, physical burnout, which, you know, I've really thought about who is allowed to have a break right now. Who has that ability, whether it's financial, whether it's through their workplace. And I think that, again, if you boil it down, we think about the people that have to be on the front lines, right? And then we think about what that demographic is, largely, you know, Black and racialized folks, folks who are in precarious positions. And these folks are the ones who, like you mentioned, Melissa, are the backbone of our society. The people that deserve the break, that deserve the protections, are the ones who have to keep working, or else it all crumbles, right? So making that link between that exhaustion and who is allowed to take a break, who is deemed worthy of that break, has been something that's been very impactful for me in my conversations with folks around how they're feeling right now.
Thank you so much. So we're still just waiting to see if anybody else has questions. For me, when I think about frontline workers, I remember towards the onset of the pandemic, when all you heard about were frontline workers and how appreciative Canadians were for these workers to, you know, there was the 7 o'clock, everybody's outside clapping for healthcare workers and that sort of thing. And I was very fearful. I mean, obviously that public policy was not going to reflect the sort of rhetoric that we were hearing. So now, I mean, the pandemic, we're in this sort of second wave, and I feel like the chatter has slowed down on how much we appreciate and what our government is tangibly doing to ensure that frontline workers are taken care of. You know, I've heard a lot of things about the pandemic pay. When I refer to the government website to see the breakdown of exactly who gets that extra boost in pay, which was not a whole lot, by the way, right? And the tangible things that Carolina, that you've just explained, as like paid sick days, things that Gabriel, you've explained, people are just regularly denied in the migrant workers, you know, amongst migrant workers compared to the rest of Canadian workers. It is just very troubling that this rhetoric, Canada continues to be a place of silence and tolerance when it comes to the most vulnerable folks. So I'll just leave it at that and see if there's any questions. Okay, so it seems that we do have a question from Rachel. So Rachel says, I know that Jamaica forced migrant workers to sign a contract indemnifying the Jamaican government of any liability if workers got COVID. Is that typical, that workers get no protection from their governments? Or is that a particular situation under the pandemic? Is Jamaica exceptional? So I don't know if you can speak to that, either of you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a powerful question. I didn't have time to touch it, but thank you. That's a great question. Going back to that question, yes, I imagine. Okay, let me see if I can start general. The Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, I said earlier, it started in 1966. So this year it's 54 years. Actually, it started in Jamaica with Jamaicans in 1966. It is estimated on that program, it is estimated that 75% of the workers on that particular program are Spanish-speaking people, with Mexico having the bulk of that. And it is estimated that 25% of the farm workers on that program, English speaking from the English Caribbean. Out of that 25% that are from the English speaking Caribbean, it is estimated like anything between 7,000 and 9,000 Jamaicans on that program. This year, and again, what is that program? It is a legal program. It is not illegal. It's a legal program. I used to think, it wasn't too long ago, up to recently, I used to think that things that were legal, they were just. I used to think so because it's legal. It is just. I used to think so. But it's only lately I realized that who are the politicians loyal to? Me, the worker, you, the voter, or their donors? Who are the politicians loyal to, right? So let us focus on Jamaica. So Jamaica, it is estimated to have anything between 7,000 and 9,000 workers in Canada on that program. This year, the government of Jamaica, and as I said, that's a legal program. So I used to think that because it's illegal, the government will be standing in your corner, have your back, covering, looking over your back, on your shoulders, right? But that didn't, when you look at, sorry, when you look at that particular situation, that wasn't the case. The government of Jamaica had the workers to sign a document basically saying, you take your own risk. You at your own risk, go at your own risk. Can you imagine that? And who are the workers? These are people who earn minimum wage. These are people who are already weak in Canada, very weak in Canada. The only person that you think that will give you extra support is your government. And yet still they allow you to go on your own. You're so weak already. And yet still the person that you expect to give some support is literally throwing you under the bus. And is that an exception? That's a good question. Is that an exception? That is again reflecting what I try to convey, that at the end of my presentation, I use this cow. I tell you, literally, we have been milked by every stakeholder. And that is a clear reflection that even our own government is really milking us. And that is very clear. I need to say also, even on the farms, was it very surprising on the farms? It became common practice for the farmers to have the workers to sign a similar document that they were giving up their right to remain. Was it surprising? And I need to say that in Canada, every government has a representative. We call them a liaison officer who represents who should be representing the interests of workers. But what if you ask the average worker, what role does the liaison officer play? They will tell you that the liaison officer is always siding with the employer. So the worker is always left stranded. And to cap it off, listen to that particular program from 1966, every year it has been negotiated or renewed or whatever the revised every year. But yet still there's no chair at that table for the workers' interest to be represented. So what does that mean? We are left stranded, right? And who are these people on the program? People of color. People who know very little about the human rights and labor issues. So to answer the question, I think that is why I'm so happy to be associated with this group, the group that I'm affiliated to, Justice for Migrant Workers. We become the voice for the voiceless. And that is why I'm really thankful for this opportunity tonight, because that is what it is, because of your movement and movements like that, you all are the ones who put the camera on the situation to highlight it and help people to discover there's power in their hands to push back and change the system and create a fair system. Thank you. That's my...
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Appreciate that insight. So we have another question that I would like to pose to Carolina. This is from Kevin. And in reference to the situation in Montreal, where Haitian refugees were waiting for their hearings, stepped up and took the jobs in long-term care homes when they had critical shortages. They still haven't had any word as to if they could stay. But do we have any similar situations here in Ontario's healthcare system? Who are the most precarious and vulnerable workers in this instance? So I'm not sure if you could speak to that, Carolina.
Yeah, I can speak to sort of my not super in-depth analysis of the situation. And I think that a lot of this has to do with the structure of employment. Around temporary agencies and around subcontracting, and around the fact that a lot of these homes don't care about the workers because they're for profit. So the structure of employment with temporary agencies, and the precarity that comes with that. For example, like if you're ill and you call in, you lose your assignment. Again, that intensification to work, or you lose your income. And similar to what we've seen in those long-term care homes with that very intensified precariousness, we're seeing in other places where there's enormous outbreaks like Peel region, where we're seeing a lot of that similar structure of work, with lots of temp agency work, lots of subcontracting, people having to work multiple jobs, not being able to assert their rights, barely even having access to the bare minimum. So I can't speak to any specific sort of in the healthcare system, but I know that that model with like temp agencies and really exploiting folks who are racialized, who are making low wages, is replicated in a lot of other sectors where we're seeing huge case numbers, like I said, like in Peel region, when there's that heavy, intense work, for example, in the warehouses and temp agency work and all of that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So we have another question for Gabriel. This one is from Grace. So Grace asks, is there an example of a country or a system which has created clear pathways to citizenship for migrant workers? Or is this kind of apartheid system common to all of the host countries?
Thank you. That's a deep question. To be honest, I am not an expert on that. But however, the few things I can say, one, it is said when South Africa was looking for a system to use, they looked around the world and they couldn't find something better, something closer, something comparable, or they copied the Canadian system. Why? Nobody complains about it. So if nobody complains, it must be a good system. Talking about the Canadian system, it is why this is so. It's because there's a culture of silence. That is one reason, right? That is one real reason, because unlike south of the border, the average Canadian would hear more about the injustices in the US than in Canada, and that is by design. That is by design. And if you allow me to point out a few things, one, we are made invisible. And there's so many ways we're made invisible. When you go to the farmer's market, you see white hands. You see white hands. You don't see the real workers. You don't see the complete story. That's one. If you look at those of us who live in the city, the more disconnected we are. The further away we move from the production of our food, the more disconnected we are. The more we do not see the story. Right? We get disconnected to the story. So the complete story is never been told. And it is. I'm being encouraged by that question. I'm being encouraged in questioning. That's especially this year, more people have been conscious or being more concerned about how their food is being produced, whether it is being grown and produced by those who respect the soil, respect the environment, and respect the workers. Increasingly, but in days and years gone by, people won't care how the food is being produced or whether people exploit the soil environment. People don't care. But increasingly, and I'm really happy for that particular question. In terms of in terms of Canada, Canada is really quiet about it because on the world stage, Canada, look at that, red and white in my country means love, right? On the world stage, you know what Canada portrays itself? Or if you're in a difficult situation, come to Canada, come and have a new start. That's the impression Canada gives the world, right? Canada goes to China, tell China, improve your human rights records. Canada goes to the UN to tell the UN, the same rights and privileges that my citizens enjoy, I will extend them to refugees. I myself, I felt the love of Canada in my home country. On 2 occasions, great occasions, Canada should be love in my home country. Red and white means love. But the very moment I came here, I realized that the red leaf here means danger, that farm workers face danger. But quietly, on the world stage, Canada gives one impression, but quietly, Canada perpetuates difficult situation. And it is we that can change it. And as I said, they use status as that thing. If to deny a status means to deny us basic labor and basic employment standards, immigration, to deny us immigration and labor standards. That's what status is being used as a weapon. So are we gonna sit back and do nothing? And I need to tell you, after World War II, the borders were open for people from Europe. Europeans, when the doors were open, as soon as they got it, they were granted status. Is that something new? I think people from Holland, after 2 years, they were able to get status and they were even given land. But the moment people of color came in, everything changed, right? Is that something new? Is that something new? Or Canada has been quiet about it? And that is why I'm really happy for this opportunity that we need to bring it to the fore and use our power to push back, to push the politicians to take action. Because you know what the politicians are saying? That's not an issue in my riding because we are so disconnected from the issue. So it is sessions like this that really highlight those issues. And I'm hoping I can push you tonight to take action, push your politicians, push your family to take action, put it on the agenda, put it on the politicians' agenda, because it's on just laws, on just policies. That is creating the vulnerabilities. That is what we need to change. And we have power in our hands to change it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. I really appreciate you sort of bringing to the forefront the symbolism, behind obviously the Canadian flag, a settler colonial flag, but reminding us that for a migrant farm worker to see that red leaf is danger. And when we go to the grocery stores, we do see those pictures of the white hand or the pale hand, and we don't actually, it doesn't reflect the reality of who's picking our fruit. I appreciate that symbolism, and so thanks for that. I'm gonna just move on quickly because we have a few more questions. Carolina had mentioned, that this pandemic has highlighted similarities and solidarity between workers that you represent, Gabriel, and other precarious folks. So are there any sort of joint campaigns that are happening? This is a question both to you and Carolina, perhaps between your alliances or any other ones. And I know, Carolina, you had posted in the chat a number of links that folks can visit, but are those like overlapping projects that are happening, coalitions? Can you guys speak to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can just start the conversation. So the Decent Work and Health Network, we work really closely. We work out of the Greater Toronto area, and we work very closely with an organization called the Workers Action Center. And there are several different groups that are housed in that same center. I spoke of two of the groups tonight, the Care Workers Action Center and the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. And all of our organizations, including the Decent Work and Health Network, and also the Fight for 15 and Fairness campaign, we work closely together in terms of what are some of our demands and some of our joint ventures. we're always happy to collaborate on projects with other people, and to boost anything through our networks, because at the end of the day, this is our collective movement. I really strongly believe that it's not about like one group. This is a movement for liberation, and we need to center like Black liberation, and we need to make sure that we have everybody on board. So although that's the way things are structured, we're very, very keen and happy to do work with super rad organizations like yourselves. We love it. Something that I will add here is that sort of as we continue to think about things in the new year, we're going to be working on a relaunch of a campaign, and we're looking to speak to workers and people about their experience and about what their vision for a just, work or decent work would look like. If anyone is interested in sharing that vision with me, what's important that we fight for in our movement, let me know. I will put my email in the chat, and you can send me an email directly, and we can chat further about sort of what you'd like to see we all fight for.
Yeah, can I add to that? Again, I have to repeat some of the things that you said, because we are united on that. 15 and fairness, as you highlighted. And I like the way you said it. Income is one of the determinants, right? Income is a strong determinant, and 15 and fairness is one thing that unite people of color, people who are marginalized. And that campaign, it unites every migrant worker, organization. And the other thing, as I said, you see, what those different groups and organizations are concerned about, we do not want to take band-aid actions or take that piece. That take at the root of our problem. At the root of our problem is status. That's at the root. So that is the united. We all united on that. So that's a united campaign, regardless where you go in Canada. It's status. And as I said, what is status? Status is our Advil. Status is our Tylenol. It takes care. I try to say I didn't have time, but as a migrant farm worker, we face 20 injustices. By having status, it would help us to take care of most. It will not solve all of them, but it will take care of most of those injustices. And by migrant workers having status in Canada, it changes the labor vulnerabilities and the immigration vulnerabilities. And these are the two key things. And that unites all different organizations that was working in the interest of migrant workers in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Carolina, for posting your email. We're going to share that on our Facebook page. So the next question we have is from Craig Smith. Craig says, thanks very much for doing this tonight. I'm a researcher at Ryerson University and have been doing some work on Canada's relationship with Latin America and the Caribbean. Research on temporary worker programs around the world often look at remittances, money sent home. These data are almost always framed through GDP, which is the overall inputs to the economy. And for many countries represented by SAWP workers, remittances are a large contributor to GDP, about 10 to 30%. There's almost no research about how much money gets sent home by SAWP workers or how important sending money home is for workers and their families. So I'm wondering if you can speak about this and how it's been affected by the pandemic.
Thank you. When it comes to money, that's a big issue. And as the person rightly pointed out, the seasonal agricultural workers program and generally the temporary foreign workers program, generally it's pitched on finance. Finance, you come here to earn your livelihood. It's pitched on finance. Your conditions are difficult in your country, so come and earn your livelihood. But I need everybody to focus on something. I don't know if I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that documentary, Life. LIFE and debt, DEBT. It highlights the institutions that create that wide divide, right? And if you live in Canada, I'm pretty sure you'll know that those companies that do all those mineral extraction and everything in those in that literally push people away from the land, causes pollution and mineral extraction, all of those things. Those companies, where do they have the head office? In Canada. In Canada, right? And nothing is been said about that, but yet still they measure the success of the program based on remittances. But under what conditions? Very few people ask under what conditions or why these people, as I said a while ago, and I'm going to tell you now, had I come to Canada by choice, I would be a tourist, but I was forced to come to Canada. Migrants are forced to come to Canada. And here are the three things that forced me to come to Canada. ED, environmental destruction. Because of a hurricane, what are countries causing global warming and climate change? Why the country is paying the price? I was forced to come to Canada because of a hurricane. I was forced to come to Canada because of the World Trade Organization. And that is one of the many institutions. And as I said, life and death would tell you some of the other institutions that are there to create that wide divide. Because of the World Trade Organization, I am in Canada. I was forced to come to Canada because of GI, global inequality. Don't we have enough resources in the world for everybody? But because of inequality, that's why I was forced to come to Canada. So we are forced to come to Canada. And generally, the average person will not want to look at those issues. What are those issues that are driving migrants? What are those issues that are causing people to move? We do not want to look at, but yet still, the proponents of the program, people who want to maintain the status quo, they would pitch it that, oh, look at you're here to support your family, right? And there's so many other myths, right? For example, here's a common one: they live like kings in their country, and it is so easy to believe that. Let me give you a simple practical example. I think $1 Canadian is more or less equivalent to 100 Jamaican dollars. I think 100 or 200. Yeah, 100 Jamaican dollars. So imagine $1 Canadian is more or less equivalent to 100 Jamaican dollars. So you'd believe that if a guy gets $14 minimum wage, that guy is an instant millionaire. That's easy to believe, right? But look at that. If one kilogram of sugar in Canada is roughly $2.50 in Canada, right? If you could get 1 kilogram of sugar in Jamaica at $2.50, can you imagine how much sugar $100 would buy? But in truth and in fact, how much is a kilogram of sugar in Jamaica? It is $250 in Jamaica, which is more or less, the cost of living is more or less comparable to Canada. But anybody would believe, if you just base it just on the exchange rate, 1 Canadian is 100. That you can run away and believe, oh, these guys live like kings. But what happened? The whole program is designed. So why so many people keep on coming back? The whole program is designed to make you dependent. If that was the case, if the remittances were as healthy as they really suggest, you know what, people graduate from the program, and have and move off to better things or build a better future. But we're dependent on it, and remittances is not a great indicator of the success of that program. But yet still, because of politicians, the way, the politicians and capitalism, it is the way it is presented, or it is a nice glitter, right? Remember, capitalism presents it as glitter, right? But the real story is inside, and very few people want to go inside of the box and find out the real story. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. I appreciate that sort of reframing and allowing us to reconceptualize how we think about remittances as well. So I think that concludes this evening. We have no more questions on Facebook, and we're just about time to wrap up. So are there any last closing words from you guys? I know you've definitely given us a lot to ponder on and figure out how we can contribute individually to the way you guys are organizing to change public policy around these issues. So are there any last minute closing remarks you'd like to remind us of? I will start with you, Carolina, if you'd like to go.
Oh, what a tough question to think on my feet. No, I think I just really want to echo what Gabriel said. I think that status for all is the link between so many different movements. And I think, yeah, I don't want to say anything else because Gabriel put it so well. But yeah, I think it's the link between our movements, and it's something that's very dear to me. And I'm just happy to share this time with you and have lots of gratitude. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Gabriel?
Sure, thank you. I need to say, I think kind of recently the Minister of Immigration said Canada is hoping to attract 1.2 million, right? But yet still, there's so many myths. And this, what did they say? The migrant workers, they're taking away all the good jobs. But look at that. It's only tonight we can highlight that. Who are the ones carrying the country, right? Who are the ones in the front line? Who are the ones, right? Are we being paid? Are we being treated fairly? Anyway, I want to draw your attention to this, close with this. I have an egg, I think it's a golden egg, and I have an egg sandwich, right? I hope everybody would eat egg sandwich because that's what I prepared here. So I hope that one is enough. What happened is, being a migrant worker in Canada, we are caught in the middle of a rock and a hard stone. In our descending countries, in our countries, unemployment is high. As you know, Canada has lots of companies that literally drive us off the land and so on. And unemployment is high because of global inequality, lots of issues, right? And I'll draw your attention again to life and death, which would highlight some of the reasons that create the great divide. So in the sending countries, we face a tough situation. We come to Canada thinking we're coming to greener pastures, and we face 20 injustices. We face tough conditions, and we highlighted some of them tonight. So we're caught in the middle. What are you going to do? I want you to see the situation like an egg. We all know an egg can break easily. We know that. And if an egg breaks from the outside, life dies. But if the egg breaks from the inside, new life comes out, right? Tonight, what are you going to do with the power in your hands? Are you going to create those conditions that are going to break that egg from the outside? Or are you going to do things that will create a condition that would allow that egg to break from the inside and create a just society? And to create a just society is the best tool you can give somebody to create a just society is status. And as I said, status is Advil, status is Tylenol. It takes care of both our labor and immigration vulnerabilities. And this is something Canada has done in the past, and Canada can do it again. But if you remain silent, the system will not change. But if you use the power in your hands, you can create a fair and better society. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And Gabriel, that analogy is just, I think, perfect for the times that we are experiencing. That hit me. So thank you both so very much for your time and your insight tonight. Our viewers definitely appreciated it, and we will definitely pass on the information that you've posted in the chats and your contact information if folks would like to further get in contact with you and collaborate. And as you said, Gabriel, break open the egg from the inside. So on that note, I will say a pleasant good night to you all. And thank you everyone for watching and joining us tonight. So stay tuned for our 2 more series that we will have coming in the coming weeks with that. So thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Okay, officially off live stream. Amazing job, everyone. That was awesome.
Great job, guys. Thank you so very much. And
That was
all
amazing.
in the back, thank you.
Wonderful.
You guys were awesome. Speakers, you guys are incredible. Appreciate you guys are both amazing storytellers in your own respects. So thank you so much. That was super needed.
We did the conditions for that, so thanks for that.
You.
Yeah, an event is successful because of you folks, so the incredible organizing. So thank you so much for bringing us on. And like I said earlier, we're happy to boost anything or to help collaborate or to connect you with anyone, and then vice versa. If I think of anything, I'm going to be like you folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Carolina, I myself may reach out to you on a personal note because I actually work with a labor union. I don't know if you've heard of Unite Here. we take care of hotel and hospitality workers. So there's a lot of things that you've raised that I may reach out to you on a personal note to chat about further.
Of course, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's a wrap. I guess the CSN team, do you guys want to debrief real quick and we can perhaps have our guests?
Can I just ask Gabriel to hold up the banner so I can screenshot it for our Instagram?
Yeah.
Is he there?
I am.
Yes, he's there.
Okay. Oh, wonderful.
Lock your face, Gabriel.
It's so big.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks, guys.
What's the attendance like from Facebook?
What's that, Gabriel?
What is the attendance like from Facebook?
I'll leave that to one of our folks to answer.
As we have a reach of 240 people.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we have around 14 comments. So yeah, there was some good engagement.
Nice. That's amazing.
We also have the recording, so we're gonna put it up on YouTube after, and people can watch it after the fact as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you.
Bye, folks. See ya.
Take care.
Bye.
now.
Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You were awesome.
That was so
Wonderful. Good job.
Yes, we finally did it.
Oh my, on time. Thank you, Catherine, and the whole like production team for making sure that we started on time. It's a big deal, guys.
Did it. We did it.
I told Katrin I was having nightmares that we were gonna have to put on the flyer if we do not start past